The moment it happens, you won't recognize it as danger. There will be no explosion, no sirens, no visible line where normal life ends and collapse begins. The lights might flicker once or not at all. Your phone may still have signal. The streets might look unchanged. But inside your home, behind locked doors, drawn curtains, and familiar walls, you will already be inside a trap you don't yet understand. Because the most dangerous place after a systemic failure begins is not the open road. It's the place you feel safest, your house. At first, staying inside feels logical. It aligns with everything you've been taught. Shelter in place, conserve energy, avoid exposure. In controlled emergencies, storms, short-term outages, localized disasters, this strategy works. It has worked for decades. That's why it feels correct. But this is not that kind of event. This is systemic failure. And systemic failure follows a different set of rules. Rules governed not by comfort or instinct, but by infrastructure, resource flow, and time-dependent decay. The danger begins with isolation. When critical systems fail at scale, power grids, communication networks, supply chains, your house stops being a protected environment and becomes a sealed dependency chamber. Everything inside it depends on systems outside of it. Water pressure, food replenishment, waste removal, temperature regulation, medical access, information flow. When those systems stop, your home doesn't protect you from collapse. It traps you inside it. The first phase is deceptively quiet. No immediate threat. No forced evacuation. No visible chaos at your door. This is what makes it lethal. Because while nothing appears wrong, critical processes have already begun to degrade. Refrigeration fails silently. Water pressure begins to drop. Fuel lines stop refilling. Digital systems lose synchronization. You don't see failure. You inherit it, and this is where the misunderstanding begins. Most people believe danger announces itself, that there will be a clear moment when it becomes time to leave. A signal, a warning, a visible breakdown. But systemic collapse doesn't operate on signals. It operates on thresholds. By the time the danger becomes visible, you've already crossed the threshold where leaving safely is possible. This is the hidden timeline most people never see. Inside your home, you measure time by comfort. How long your food lasts, how long your battery holds, how long the lights stay on. But outside, the real clock is measuring something else entirely. Population response delay. Every minute people stay inside, waiting for confirmation, waiting for clarity, waiting for instructions, the eventual exit becomes more dangerous. Because everyone leaves at once. This is not speculation. It's a pattern observed in every large-scale disruption. When uncertainty dominates, humans default to inaction. They wait, they observe, they hesitate. But when reality becomes undeniable, when water stops, when food runs out, when communication fails, the response is immediate and collective. Mass movement under resource scarcity is not evacuation. It's competition. The hidden science behind this lies in behavioral convergence. In stable systems, human behavior is distributed. People make different choices at different times. But under systemic stress, behavior compresses. Decisions synchronize. Millions of individuals arrive at the same conclusion simultaneously. Leave now. But by then, now is already too late. The evidence is consistent across multiple scenarios. During extended blackouts, urban populations begin moving only after 48 to 72 hours of sustained failure. During supply chain disruptions, panic buying begins only after visible shortages appear. During evacuations, traffic gridlock forms not at the start of danger, but at the moment of recognition. Recognition, not risk, triggers movement, and recognition always lags behind reality. Inside your house, this delay feels safe. It feels rational. You still have food, you still have walls, you still have control. But what you don't see is how quickly those advantages degrade once systems stop replenishing them. Water is the first invisible threat. Most homes rely on pressurized municipal systems. When power fails or infrastructure is disrupted, pressure drops. Not instantly, but progressively. Faucets still run, but slower, then weaker, then intermittently, until finally nothing. At that point, every person who waited is now competing for the same external source. And external sources are limited. The same applies to food. Your home contains a fixed supply. But outside, supply chains operate on just-in-time logistics. Stores are not warehouses, they are distribution points. When restocking stops, depletion accelerates faster than expected. What should last days disappears in hours. And here's where the escalation begins. Because once basic resources become uncertain, behavior shifts from passive to defensive. People who were waiting inside their homes begin to realize that staying put is no longer viable. But when they step outside, they encounter a new environment, one shaped not by order but by scarcity. The rules have changed. Movement is no longer free. Space is no longer neutral. Every location, roads, stores, water points, becomes a contested zone. And those who delayed their exit now enter this environment at its most volatile stage. This is why timing is everything. Leaving early feels unnecessary. Leaving late becomes impossible, and staying becomes fatal. The transition between these states is not gradual, it's abrupt. One moment your home feels secure, the next it's a liability. But because the change happens internally, within systems, within infrastructure, within collective behavior, you don't perceive it until it's already complete. This is the core danger, not the event itself, but your position relative to it. Because once the external environment destabilizes, your house stops being a shelter. It becomes a fixed point in a collapsing system, and fixed points don't adapt. They get surrounded. Containment feels like control until it turns into exposure. At first, your house still behaves like a boundary. Walls separate you from uncertainty. Doors create the illusion of choice, open or closed, safe or unsafe. But as external systems continue to degrade, those boundaries stop protecting you from what's outside and start concentrating what's inside. Air changes. Not immediately, not dramatically, but measurably. In a functioning environment, air circulation is assisted by powered systems. HVAC units, filtration cycles, pressure balancing. When power becomes unstable or fails completely, airflow becomes static. Carbon dioxide levels slowly rise in enclosed spaces. Humidity increases, contaminants accumulate. This is not enough to kill you overnight, but it's enough to impair you. Cognitive function declines subtly when CO2 concentrations rise above baseline. Decision-making slows. Reaction time lengthens. Perception narrows. Under normal conditions, these changes are negligible. Under stress, they become critical. Because while you feel like you're thinking clearly, your ability to process risk is already degraded. This is the second layer of danger, environmental feedback distortion. Inside your home, your senses tell you everything is stable. Temperature is manageable. Air feels breathable. Light still exists, even if it's artificial or limited. But these signals are misleading. They are lagging indicators, not real-time diagnostics. By the time discomfort becomes obvious, damage has already begun. And while your internal environment degrades slowly, the external environment is accelerating. This mismatch creates a psychological trap. You feel stable. The world outside is not. This leads directly into one of the most dangerous misunderstandings in any collapse scenario. The belief that conditions will improve if you wait long enough. It's a deeply human assumption. Systems fail, then they recover. Power outages end. Supplies return. Authorities respond. This pattern is so deeply embedded in modern experience that it overrides contradictory evidence. But systemic collapse doesn't follow recovery cycles. It follows cascade failure. In a cascade, one system fails, placing stress on another. That system fails, transferring stress again. Power loss affects water treatment. Water issues affect sanitation. Sanitation failure increases disease risk. Communication breakdown disrupts coordination. Coordination failure delays repair. Each failure amplifies the next, and none of them resolve independently. The hidden science behind this is network dependency. Modern infrastructure is not a collection of separate systems. It's an interlinked web. Remove one critical node, and the entire network begins to destabilize. The speed of this destabilization depends on redundancy. And in most urban environments, redundancy is optimized for efficiency, not resilience, which means it's minimal. This is why early stages of collapse feel slow, and later stages feel instantaneous. The evidence for this pattern is found in every major infrastructure failure. Initial disruption appears manageable. Systems partially compensate. Temporary solutions mask deeper issues. But once a critical threshold is crossed, failure accelerates beyond control. Inside your house, you don't see the threshold. You only feel the aftermath. Water stops completely, not gradually completely. Toilets stop flushing. Pipes run dry. Stored water becomes your only supply. At the same time, waste begins to accumulate. Without removal systems, sanitation becomes a localized hazard. Food begins to change as well. Refrigerated items spoil first. Then frozen goods thaw. Without consistent power, preservation fails. What was once abundance becomes liability. Consuming compromised food introduces new risks: bacterial contamination, foodborne illness, dehydration from gastrointestinal stress. Now the environment inside your home is no longer neutral. It's actively degrading. And here's where the escalation sharpens, because while internal conditions worsen, external movement increases. You start to hear it before you see it. Distant voices, vehicles moving at unusual hours, footsteps where there were none before. The rhythm of normal life begins to fragment. Patterns break. Silence becomes irregular, interrupted by bursts of activity that don't align with any schedule you recognize. This is population displacement beginning, not organized evacuation, unstructured movement. People leaving their homes at different times for different reasons with different levels of preparation. Some are searching for resources. Others are relocating. Some are simply reacting, moving because staying no longer feels safe. This creates a fluid environment, unpredictable, unstable. And your house, once invisible within a functioning neighborhood, becomes something else entirely. A fixed resource point. Lights, if you still have them, are visible. Sounds from inside carry outward. Even the appearance of occupancy becomes a signal. In a resource-scarce environment, signals attract attention. Not all attention is hostile, but all attention carries risk. This is where another misunderstanding emerges, the belief that remaining unnoticed is enough. It is, because invisibility requires control over variables you no longer manage: light, sound, movement, scent, waste. Even if you reduce your signature, others may not. Nearby activity draws broader attention. Movement in adjacent areas increases the probability of discovery, and once discovered, your house is no longer just a shelter. It's a target of interest. The hidden mechanism here is resource mapping. In uncertain environments, humans begin to map their surroundings based on perceived value, where food might be, where water might exist, where shelter could be taken. This mapping doesn't require certainty. It operates on probability. Occupied house equals potential resources, and probability is enough. The evidence is clear in post-disaster environments. Homes that remain occupied without external coordination are approached, observed, and eventually tested. Sometimes it's a knock, sometimes it's surveillance, sometimes it's forced entry, but the pattern is consistent. Isolation invites inspection. Now your position changes again. You are no longer just inside a degrading environment. You are inside a known location, and known locations lose their advantage quickly. This is the point where survival implications become unavoidable. Staying inside no longer conserves resources, it concentrates risk. Every hour you remain, your supplies diminish, your environment worsens, and your visibility increases. Meanwhile, your options narrow. Routes that were once clear become congested or controlled. Destinations that were once viable become depleted. Time is no longer neutral, it's working against you. And yet the instinct to stay remains strong. Because leaving requires crossing a threshold your mind resists, abandoning structure for uncertainty. Inside, even a failing environment feels predictable. Outside, everything is unknown. But the reality is reversed. Inside, the outcome is already determined: degradation, exposure, depletion. Outside, variables still exist, and survival